Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. As always, have with me my co-host and Hall of Famer, Steve Flink. For those that watch this on video, you see both Steve and I are ready. We got our Wimbledon whites on. Such a short, wait between the French and Wimbledon as opposed to Australia to the French. In Australia, you have the Australian, then you have some other events, then you get the Sunshine Double, and then you get the arduous and long clay court season before we get to Roland Garros. You finish Roland Garros, you blink your eye, and here we are. We're recording Saturday, early evening, first ball, 36, 40 hours away almost, Steve. I'm ready. I know you're ready.
Yeah, no, I think, and I think fortunately the players are too. The 3 weeks it's enough time, and they pick their spots, and Djokovic came over and played an exo at Hurlingham the other day against Francis Tiafoe. Everybody's prepared, I think, and it's the highlight of the year for me always, because no matter what everybody wants to talk about in terms of the gains in stature and prestige of the U.S. Open, which has grown significantly in so many ways as a major sporting event in America, and the Australian Open, which starts the year, and Roland Garros, which has its place as the clay court capital of the world. There's still nothing like Wimbledon, and there never will be. And no player will be honest if they don't tell you it's the biggest, which is why when Rafa won it for the first time in 2008, he was so overjoyed. You could see it, and he was obviously enamored of the French clay and so proud of what he'd already done there. But when he broke through at Wimbledon in 2008, I think when all is said and done, and he talks about his career, he's going to talk about that epic with Roger in 2008, not just the epic, but the fact that it was his first Wimbledon title.
Correct. Yeah, very well said. There is truly something special about Wimbledon, and no one knows that better than you. So let's get to it. A few things before we look at some of the intriguing first round matchups. Again, with these previews, we normally don't like to project too far because so many things could happen. But we will talk about a few of the intriguing first round matches, maybe a little bit projection, but not too far into the future. Before we do that, let's hit on some things that are leading up to this first ball at Wimbledon. First, on Thursday, this past Thursday, some big news. I didn't see it coming. I don't know if anyone saw it coming. Caroline Wozniacki announces she is going to return. Not only return, but then we hear she gets a wild card entry into this year, 2023 U.S. Open. That's just a couple months away, Steve. I was like, wow, that's great. She's returning. I was even more shocked that they announced a wild card for her just around the corner. Again, she knows her level more than anyone out here, but that seemed quick for me.
It's obviously in deference to, someone who concluded 2 years at number one in the world, won a major at the Australian Open, and that has been in the finals of the U.S. Open. So I get why they would do that. But she, of course, will have to put in a lot of hard work between now and then. I suspect, David, that one of the reasons why she decided to do it was she got in that television booth. As you know, in the last year, she's done a lot of commentary. And I think being around it, I remember seeing her at Wimbledon last year up in the player area with her whole family. They were all just gathered there around lunchtime. And I'm thinking to myself, it must be hard to be around the scene like this and come to terms with the fact that you're not playing anymore. And the way she explained it was, the kids are growing up. If she was going to do it, she had to do it now. This was the time. In a few years' time, it wouldn't work. So let's hope for the best.
Yeah, no, I agree. It'll be interesting to see how the comeback goes. Coco Gauff. Good week for Coco. She didn't win the title, but very good week. She beat her doubles partner right now, Jessie Pegula, 6-3, 6-3 in Eastbourne. Coco then loses to Madison Keys, who wins the tournament. We've talked about Madison quite a bit. When Madison's playing well, she can hit anyone off the court. It's just the inconsistencies with her game that are obviously holding her back, because, again, when she's on top of her game, she could literally hit anyone off the court. Both Coco and Madison, can't have much better prep than they both had this past week.
No, it's true. That was a nice lift for Coco to have that win over Pegula. It's her best win in a long time. And I don't think it'll be that stinging to Pegula, by the way. I think she can handle it. She's had such good, solid results, and she's such a resilient competitor. As far as keys, what impressed me was watching her final today was how she handled the wind so well. It was frustrating. There were times that I remember on a match point, she hit a backhand down the line, which she thought safely, and it swerved wide on her. The wind just took it wide, and she was exasperated, but she stayed with it. So I think this is her best tournament in a long time, and it'll carry her into Wimbledon with the winds behind her, the winds of confidence, you might say. So I'll be really intrigued to see what she can do, to see if Pegula can bounce back, which I think she will from the loss to Coco, and then Coco just to keep going. Unfortunately, I'm looking at the draw as we speak, and once again, David, Coco is seeded 7th this time. She would face the number 1 seed Swiatek in the quarters. She seems not to be able to avoid Iga, which is not. Now, maybe she'd rather play her on grass, by the way, than the clay. I do believe that, despite the fact that they played a French final a year ago and then met again this year, again, not in the finals. But I think that'll help that it's the grass. Maybe if she's getting a lot of first serves in, she can impose herself more. But bad luck in a way that some of these draws have not been kind to her.
Yeah, a lot of people said as soon as the draw came out, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, Coco cannot get away from Iga." But agreed to what you said. If she has to face her, grass may be her best bet in order to get a win over Iga. So we'll see. Hey, you mentioned Caroline Wozniacki in the commentary booth. Another person who's dabbled in the commentary booth at Tennis Channel, Mr. Christopher Eubanks, who made top 100 when he had his run in Miami. Now he's top 50. I think he's going to be like 43 come Monday.
Yeah.
He just won his first ATP title of his career. This one on the grass courts in Mallorca. Mr. Christopher Eubanks is playing some ball this year, Mr. Flink.
Oh, he is. And fortunately, sometimes you need just that element of luck, a little bit of luck. He'd be the first to admit it, saving 5 match points in his semifinal against Harris and had a love 40 hold near the end, which was crucial. And then takes advantage of it and seemingly has a tough final on his hands against Manarino, the left-handed Frenchman, and he wins it easily, 1-4. A little trouble.
He beat him in Miami too, Steve.
Beat him in Miami on the hard, which helped, I'm sure, coming in. But still, this was a really clear-cut win. They had an exchange of breaks in the second set, but to win 1-4 in that final, and it's going to make his life so much easier for the rest of the year now because of the higher ranking, getting into events, and also just believing in himself. And he played really smart tennis.
It's interesting to see these guys. They try and they work and they get so close to cracking that top 100, right? And then they finally do it, and boom, he's almost cracked 60 spots since that point. It's like what you said. It's that confidence. It's like there's that mental block of you're either in the top 100 or you're not in the top 100. And once you get through into the top 100, it's like, here we go. Some people handled it very well, and you see what Chris is doing right now. He's on a roll.
And you mentioned the commentary, David, and I think he comes across very well on the air.
So well.
And he's thoughtful and he's cerebral and he's got belief in himself without being cocky. But this will do him a world of good. This is more than he ever could have anticipated. And regardless of how he does at Wimbledon, I think he's got a big summer ahead.
Let's go focus now on the draw itself, and we got to start with a guy he's won 28 matches in a row here. Novak Djokovic. You remember in 2018 he beat Kevin Anderson. That was a lot of rain delays and a lot of crazy long matches. Novak beat Rafa over a 2-day span. That was the one where Kevin beat John Isner. Took forever. Yeah. Kevin was just gassed in that final. I'm not saying Kevin would have beaten Novak even if he was healthy, but he had no chance of beating him that day because of the lengthy match prior. Then you have the 2019 Classic between Novak and Roger. Everyone still talks about that match, and the people who are Roger Federer fans wishes we move past this match right now. And then there's the Matteo Berrettini. Remember, in 2020, we didn't play it. So in 2021,
yeah, but David, that's important because think about it. When we think about it, the fact that Novak has pulled ahead in the major championships race, he's one ahead of Rafa now, 23-22. That Wimbledon 20, he would have been a huge favorite, a big favorite, as big a favorite as he is right now. Didn't get to play it at all. That probably hurt him more than anybody because he was the most likely to succeed. Just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, and then and then he just continues on, right? The 2021 against Berrettini, and then 2022, the last year's final against Nick Kyrgios, who I thought Nick played very, very well that match. It took Novak to play really well to beat Nick. So here he is, 28 matches in. I mean, I know Carlos is number one, but before we get into some matchups, I mean, Novak is the clear cut favorite here.
Listen, Carlos, it was such an appealing young man, and so confident yet never cocky, never arrogant. He was the first to say it himself. He knows it. Everybody knows it. Carlos got a nice boost by winning Queens Club. It was a very good effort, his first grass court tournament title, but this is a whole different world at Wimbledon, you know, for 2 weeks at a Grand Slam event. And Novak understand he's also going for an 8th title to tie Roger Federer for the men's record. So that's also quite significant, quite important to him. Not to mention, he wants that 3rd straight Grand Slam title to keep alive his hopes of a Grand Slam, which you very correctly 2 years ago, when Tracy Austin and myself were doubting that he would ever get himself back in that position. So hard to be 2 or 3 legs along, to put yourself in this position and look like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Turns out it may not be, because he's the big favorite for Wimbledon. So he's got so much riding historically on this coming fortnight on the lawns of Wimbledon.
And what Steve is talking about, obviously, it's so hard to win the first 2 because you have this guy named Rafa Nadal who is always winning that 2nd slam. So when you are able to get those first 2, you have to take advantage of that opportunity, which Novak did 2 years ago, went to the final match and lost to Daniil Medvedev.
And as you mentioned, there's a big gap between the Australian and the French, and there's a long clay court campaign. So in addition to Rafa, it's just very tricky to sort of find you come into Australia and there's been an off season, but Novak, that's been his home away from home more than any of the majors. He's got 10 titles there now, but it's always tricky to prepare yourself for Roland Garros. And most of those years you're worried about Rafa. This year was more a matter of just recapturing his form, which Novak managed to do over the fortnight at Roland Garros. So here he is. And these things are definitely swirling around his mind, David. You know, that keeping his hopes alive for the Grand Slam, winning Wimbledon again to tie Roger, and then knowing that would put him in a position to go back to New York, where he might have considerably more fan support than he had 2 years ago, with the exception of the final, when there was almost a sympathy support for him at the end, when Medvedev was about to close him out in straight sets and the fans were applauding him, and he kind of broke into tears in his towel at the changeover. That's unusual. This time, I think if he put himself in that position, wins Wimbledon again, the New York fans I suspect will be largely behind him over the course of the tournament. So there's all of these things are clearly in the forefront of his mind right now, and he's just trying to keep in the present and just take it match by match. He's awfully good at that.
Yeah, he is, and I agree with you. I think he did 2 years ago in New York. I think leading up to that final, he did everything possible that he could do, and he did it quite well in trying to keep in the present. If you remember his interviews after each match, he didn't try to look too far ahead.
No.
I mean, gosh, 27 out of 28 matches in slams. But I agree with you, Steve. You know, experience is often your best teacher, right? And if he's blessed to be able to get that opportunity again, there's no guarantee he's going to win it. There's never any guarantee he's going to win it, but he will have had that past experience in his head that he knows, look, I've been here before. This is what I could maybe learn from my past and maybe get through the finish line here.
Absolutely right. And then Mats Wilander was sort of getting at that in an interview that he did with Eurosport, that he thought he'd be more relaxed at Wimbledon than you might expect. And I think in turn, if he gets through that, yes, I think his attitude would be a little different. And he tried to sort of relieve some of the tension, because you could feel it. You mentioned the post-match interviews at the Open 2 years ago, but I could feel it every pre-match interview, which they forced the players to do, that you just felt like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I got a feeling things could be very different this year. But first things first, he's got to secure that Wimbledon title.
Absolutely. Okay, let's start on the women's draw. And to me, there were some matchups that there were some big names. The rankings, there may be some disparity in rankings, but name-wise and players who may be lower ranked, yet have been dangerous in the past on this surface. So let's let's talk about a few of these. I'll kind of be like quick hitters with you. The first one that I saw was Ali Risk Armitage versus Paula Badosa. Paula Badosa has been all over the news. We all know why, right? Her and Stefanos Tsitsipas. I think they're going to be on the front cover of People magazine if they keep this up. But you got Ali Risk, who's played well on the grass before, Steve. Again, her results have been inconsistent, but big name, played well in the past. Can she beat Paula Badosa in the first round?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a hard match to call because Paula hasn't been she's been trying to get back to the very top of her game, and she hasn't quite reached that level yet. And grass is certainly not her favorite surface. And you're right, Risk enjoys the grass and has had good success there in the past, and a really good match with Serena. And, you know, she's performed quite well on the lawns. But I think that it could be very tight. It's just that recently Risk has not been the same player. That's what we have to wonder. Can she get back to top form? Because we haven't seen her at the level that she was, a couple years ago at Wimbledon. I mean, 2 to 4 years ago. So that's what I'm wondering. You know, which Risk are we going to see? Is it going to be, because if she's in top form and confident, that match could be very, very close.
Agree.
If not,
this one.
Not, I'm going with the Badosa in a couple of tight sets. But if Risk is in really great form and suddenly sort of revisits her past, then I see her with a chance to pull it off in 3 sets.
We'll see. I'm leaning Badosa on that one. Okay, how about this one?
I am too.
43-year-old Venus Williams draws Alina Svitolina. That's a tough one for both players. Tough one for Venus, but you know how good she's been at Wimbledon. So that should be an intriguing first round match as well.
Yeah, and Venus has been playing well on the grass, had a really good match with Ostapenko, which she lost in 3 sets. That'll help her. She can't serve as consistently big as she used to, where she could get in that 123 to 127 mph range. And she was the biggest server in women's tennis. Serena was the best server, but Venus that first serve was fearsome and not fun for opponents. Right now, she can't rely on that weapon quite to the degree she did in the past, and she's not as fast as she was, but she's still Venus and she's still formidable. And so if she was going to play Svitolina on any court, this would be the one she would pick. She would love to play her on the grass versus hard or clay for sure. So it'll be interesting. Again, I still go with Svitolina. Maybe it goes 3, but I've got to like her chances.
We mentioned her earlier, Coco Gauff versus Sophia Kenin. Kenin's got the Grand Slam. She's got the major title that Coco has been searching for. Obviously, Coco's been more informed than Sophia Kenin has lately, but still, very interesting first round match.
It is. That's again. I mean, here I was looking ahead a little bit for Coco into the potential quarter with the top seed Swiatek, but yeah, that's no automatic win for Coco by any means, and she's got to sort of treat that as if she's already in the 4th round of the quarters. You know, she really needs to gear up for that match. Usually, a lot of times the top seeds can ease their way into the tournament. They're not taking it for granted, but they might be playing somebody, far less accomplished and less dangerous. And therefore they feel like if they're at 80 to 85%, they're good enough. Here, I think Coco wants to feel like she's 90 to 95% to make certain that she gets the job done.
Another player we mentioned earlier and Coco's doubles partner, Jessie Pegula versus Lauren Davis. Lauren is someone that I've always kind of followed throughout her career, Midwestern roots. I know some of the people in her camp just growing up in the Midwest. Big fan of Lauren. Obviously, heart of a lion, short in size, right? She's short in size, heart of a lion. We all remember the crazy match she played against Halep in the Australian Open a few years ago, which, oh man, we would have liked Lauren to get through that match. But she's also pretty good on this surface. Jessie, I think a little bit too much for her right now.
I would think so. I would definitely think so right now. Jessie, she's a better match player at this point, and she should, given her stature, and she spent so much time at number 3 in the world, and I like her chances. And again, she's going to go out there with her typical brand of professionalism and know-how and match playing skills, and I'll take her in not easy though, maybe a sort of a 4-4, 4-5 match.
Still looking for her first semifinal in a major, right, Steve?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Wimbledon champ, defending champ Lena Rybakina versus another name who's done well in the past on grass, Shelby Rogers. Again, Shelby just hasn't had the results as of late, but we all know how dangerous she can be. Rybakina, defending champ. We all know how well she likes this surface. Can Shelby make it competitive?
I hope so. I hope so. I feel like Shelby can play on any surface. I'm not sure she's not a bit better on the hard courts, but she is somebody that does not. There's no extra apprehension for her to play the top players. You know, we remember her beating Ash Barty at the U.S. Open. I mean, she can do it against the top ones. Right now, I don't know. Right now, I feel like she's up against an awfully good server in Rybakina. I think that's going to be the question. Can she return? She's a very good returner. She's got a great ground game overall, but is she going to be able to return consistently enough to worry Rybakina? I don't know. I see that more or less 3 and 4 for Rybakina, because I think her serve is going to dictate the outcome of that contest, that she will be largely unbreakable. That's how particularly, by the way, with the courts being so slick in the first round, that does not help Shelby's chances. But it's nice for the fans to see that, because, you know, David, with these 32 seeds in the men's and women's divisions, a lot of times we don't get this many enticing first round matches. It does, and that's been one of the things I haven't liked about when they went from 16 to 32 seeds. I would have preferred they stayed at 16. But this year's Wimbledon has an unusual, uncommon number of highly appealing first round clashes for the men and the women, and you just mentioned one of them.
And let's go now to the men's side, and let's look at a few of these first round matchups. I kind of wish it was on a different surface for Dominic's team, but it's Dominic Thiem versus Stefanos Tsitsipas. I think Tsitsipas wins this in 3. If he's not playing great, maybe 4. But again, Thiem versus Tsitsipas, first round of a major. You don't expect to see that in the first round.
No, and they've had not at all. And you've had this history. They once met in the ATP finals at the end of the year, had a spectacular match that Stefanos won. And they played mainly on big stages in latter rounds. And now, of course, Thiem has been through a very difficult period in his career and problems with his wrist and missing all that time and sort of a COVID crisis in his mind. There were many things that happened to him that wounded his psyche and his body. Now, that's not a great draw, despite the fact that Stefanos appears a bit distracted maybe by this new relationship, but beyond that, he's just in a tennis slump. So that might help a little bit for Thiem, that it's not necessarily the best Stefanos, but I still feel, despite the fact that Tsitsipas has not fully established himself on grass yet, that his game, the coming forward, the attacking, the willingness to volley, all of his skills and attributes play to the surface much better than Thiem's. And so I still feel, and again, they'll be playing with the courts quick, where Dominic is not going to have time to really unload his biggest shots all the time. You know, it's not going to, I just feel like the conditions will favor Tsitsipas. So I agree with your call, 3 or 4, but Tsitsipas the winner.
And if we project just one round later, if Tsitsipas wins that match, there's a potential matchup with Andy Murray. And if Andy gets his teeth into that match, you know that crowd is going to rally behind Andy. Let's hope for tennis fans we do get that potential second round match.
And remember, they played a few years ago that great match at the U.S. Open, and it was a little controversy, a little contentious. Andy said some things about Stefanos in the bathroom breaks, but the bottom line is a very tight match. Here would be on the center court. Now, I have a very different feeling about that match, because I think Murray would have a very real chance, as you said, if he gets his teeth into it early and gets that crowd behind him. It could be a very tough day for Stefanos. Would need to be in top form because he's going to be contending with a 2-time former champion and also the crowd favorite. So it'll be a Davis Cup atmosphere. So that won't be as enjoyable for Tsitsipas, I don't think, as his first round match. I hope we get to see it, though. That would be fascinating right now to see Murray and Stefanos.
Yes, it would. Okay. Hey, for you Taylor Fritz fans, you want to really be careful with this first round match right now. He plays Yannick Hanfmann Yannick had a huge week, really good week for me. Beat Tsitsipas. He also beat Feliciano Lopez. Shout out Feliciano Lopez. That's his last tournament, I believe, Steve. Great career for Lopez.
Right.
Taylor has not been playing up to his standard as of late. I'm looking forward to seeing that match. I think Taylor gets through. But again, if you're a Taylor Fritz fan, you cannot look past this match because this could be a tricky one.
Taylor knows, David, that a lot of people took note last year when he was in the quarters and was ever so close to losing in a 5th set tiebreak to Rafa. And then he would have played Kyrgios in the semis. Rafa had a default. And who's to know? Frankly, I think he would have had almost a 50-50 match going in. His game against Nick's on grass, it would have been very close. We'll never know. But that's the best major we've ever seen from him. And he really wants to assert himself in the majors. And he knows he hasn't been playing well lately, but he's got to sort of put these recent weeks on grass behind him and just find a way to win that match. And I think it's 4, possibly 5 sets, but I like his chances in the end to come through.
Yeah, I like Taylor to go to gut his way through that one as well. All right. Hey, Wimbledon defending champion Nick Kyrgios. He's played 1 match this year. No one knows what to expect. He plays David Goffin. I don't think Nick even knows what to expect. He did get seeded, so he's not going to be playing. He wasn't one of those dangerous floaters this year in the draw. That said, if he gets on a roll, he can play with anybody. We all know that. But this may be too tall an order, Steve. He just hasn't played. And we talk about how important match practice is. Maybe he can work his way into a tournament, as you referred to earlier. But again, if it goes long matches, who knows how his body will hold up. It's just asking a lot with him not playing all year.
As you said, David, we're taping now, just so the listeners can know, we're taping on Saturday. I still feel there's about a 30% chance he pulls out of the tournament. I hope
Really?
I'm wrong.
Really?
I mean, I'm that's sheer speculation.
Yeah.
But for the reasons you just cited, I'm just not sure he's that healthy. There's talk about the wrist. We know about the knee. He has great respect for Goffin. It's going to be a question of how he's been feeling in practice, whether he really thinks he's up to this. Hopefully he does try to play that match, but as you know, Goffin been in the quarters there. He's a wily veteran. He knows what he's doing on every surface. He won't be afraid of Nick, and he knows that Nick is terribly shy does not have that match play that a year ago it was. I mean, he had good preparation, a couple of semis on the grass. He played really well coming in, and he did pull out of 1 tournament at the end, but you knew he'd had a lot of matches. And that was one of the keys to his run to the final, was that he was match tough. So not only to just turn on a switch right now with 1 match here, I just don't, like you said, so maybe he escapes against Goffin in 4 or 5 tough sets. Where does it go from there?
Yeah, because I think I referred to it last week. If you win even a long 4-setter or 5-setter, your body will be in shock. His body is not used to doing that this year yet. So how quickly can you recover for your next round?
Normally, you're right. And normally when the players are in shape, that 1 day off is enough to enable them. But I don't think it's going to be enough for him this time around. So to me, the notion that he would end up playing Djokovic in the quarters, which is what would happen if he gets that far and they both get that far, I don't know. It's very unlikely. I feel like he had a dream run last year. He earned it. He deserved it. He might well have beaten Rafa, especially in the condition Rafa was in last year. So all power to him. And as you mentioned, it was a first-rate final. He won the first set against Novak and eventually lost in a 4-set tiebreak. It was a really high quality final on both sides of the net. But I just don't see how he replicates that. He played
circumstances
so well.
are really different this year than what they were last year.
He was so committed from the grass court season through the hard court season, right into a very good US Open where he beat Medvedev for the 2nd time that summer. But I just don't think he's right now, given these circumstances, when he ended his year early in Tokyo last year, and then he was gone for the rest of the year. And for basically the first 5-6 months of this year, plays 1 match on grass, and he's gone. Yeah. And I don't know anybody. I mean, there are a lot of guys that can do miraculous things, but I think that's asking a lot of himself. So as I say, we got to hope that he can just show up and be there and be able to play Goffin, and then we'll see where it goes from there. My guess is he doesn't go more than 3 rounds. Third round, to me, third round is going to be the limit. That's my guess right now.
Yeah. We'll see. Like you said, hopefully he can play and hopefully he can be healthy and he doesn't have to withdraw from any of his matches if he advances along the way. So stay tuned for that. Listen, I want to end with a player that we talked about last week, and we didn't know the draw at that time, and we had high hopes for him. He has high hopes for himself. The draw is out now. It doesn't look that terrible for him, and that's Sebastian Korda. He would, if he advances to the third round. Cam Norrie is a possible third round opponent for him. Cam is always difficult to play. And then if he gets through that, I believe he would play Tsitsipas in the round of 16 if both those guys are still in there. That's the second week we talked about. Like, let's get him to the second week. If he can get to the quarters, that would be great. But the second week is we feel the standard for Sebi right now. The draw, not great, but not terrible.
No, as you just pointed out, I mean, that's a fair analysis, very reasonable analysis. He's seeded 22. Norrie is seeded 12. You're right. They could play in the third round. He might have to play Tsitsipas if Tsitsipas gets there. And otherwise, it could be any number of guys, Cressy, Shelton, you name it. But lots of tough opponents. Then eventually, if he gets through all that, gets through the 16s into the quarters, he might have to play Medvedev. But he did beat Medvedev at the Australian Open. So I don't think he should be that discouraged. It's a tougher draw than other seeds might get in his range in the low 20s. But he shouldn't be complaining about it. He should feel like with his skills on grass and good preparation at Queens, that this is still a nice opportunity for him, and he's got to take advantage of it.
I agree. All right, I'm gonna leave it to you for any final thoughts before first ball comes Monday morning in the U.S.
No, I mean, nothing, not too much more to add. Just that I'm glad you honed in so closely on those first round matches, because I think the fans are in for a treat the first couple of days this year in a way that, as I said earlier, is not typical. I mean, it just came up beautifully in terms of these are matchups that might not have happened, but the draw is done. It's wide open. It's for the public. There's no shenanigans. It just fell this way. It happened this way. If you're not in the top 32, who knows where you're going to end up? And that's why we end up with a Tsitsipas team first round match. But I think that's great, because I think too often the first 4 or 5, once we in pre-third round, when seeds meet seeds for the first time, sometimes we can be a little disappointed. Yes, we're watching great players win their matches. The favorites are advancing. There's a few upsets here and there, but maybe not enough enthralling, enticing confrontations. That's not going to be true this year. We're going to have a lot of fun the first couple of rounds.
We sure will. And for the listeners, the next time Steve and I record, we may have a little surprise for you. So make sure to stay tuned to us when we record, maybe next week and most likely next Monday. And again, hopefully it'll be a little surprise for everyone. So with that, Steve, I know you're fired up and looking forward to this. I am too. Let's hope there's great tennis all around. Thank you for your time. And I know we'll be eyes glued to the TV these first few rounds.
Absolutely, David. See you in about a week.